Hey, Warners, this is your warning that the following episode of Women Your Mother Warned You About went a bit rogue from the beginning. You know, one of those episodes where we started the show before we started the show. You know, we were recording and then things happened. So put on your big girl panties and buckle up for the ride with Rachel Pitts, Keith Walters, and yours truly, Gina Trimarco.
So Felix was cooking the other night, and he was cooking great ribs on Memorial Day. It was fantastic ribs. And then he had some vegetables he was going to put in the oven, and he was in kind of a speedy mood. He was all jacked up, and he opened the oven and proceeded to flip the vegetables all down to the bottom of the stove, right? So then we were laughing. He's like, oh, I was just trying to get a good char on him before we did it. And then we were laughing about the smell of that was being created from these burned vegetables on the bottom of the oven that was covering up the delicious smell of the ribs. And he's like, oh yeah. I said, well, what's that seasoning you are using? He's like, it's Greek seasoning. I said, oh, he goes, well, maybe we should create like a candle. It could scent the house with the scent of like Greek, seasoning. And I was like, yeah, like that blue of the Greek, of Greece. What is the beautiful town? Santorini, yeah. With the beautiful blue and the white buildings. And he's like, oh yeah, azul. And I was like, that's Spanish. They don't speak Spanish in Greece. And it was so funny because he's been trying to learn Spanish. I'm like, they don't speak Spanish in Greece.
Wow.
It was the funniest Saturday Night Live moment.
Have you tried Babbel? Babbel?
I use Babbel.
Okay.
And I actually started using Babbel to try to learn Spanish as well. But I speak fluent French, so it's really challenging to me to learn Spanish because I revert back to French. It's interesting because I start thinking in French because you're
fluent.
And then I try. It's just so close that it's hard. It's hard for me. So
yeah,
I kind of trailed off.
Yeah, I have lately.
What are we talking about today to keep us on track?
Well, what do you want to talk about today, Gina?
Oh, Keith, we haven't been with you in so long. I did get that article when we literally had this conversation on Marco Polo yesterday. Because that's our new thing, Rachel and I sending each other only in macho voice.
Oh, man, I bet that
Oh my God, that app is a hoot. Rachel's like, are you just discovering this now? I'm like, yeah.
I actually don't Snapchat's the same for me. I have two people that I communicate on Snapchat, and I have one person and one other woman. The only reason I had Marco Polo is another real estate agent wanted to communicate with me that way. I literally don't communicate with anyone else that way, but it is fun.
But our Tri Marco Polos are very funny, I think. Try Marco Polo. The whole menopause thing is for real bullshit.
Okay, Gina clearly wants this to be her topic, so let's talk about it.
I think no, not today because I'm too heated up about it, and then I'll
No
talk
pun
about
intended there.
No, yeah, exactly. Well, here's the funny thing. I don't know if you know this, Keith. I don't think we talked about it with you. My anemia returned. I don't know if you know that. So my anemia returned. So it's put me down for the count a little bit. But the good thing about anemia is because your body can't really make heat because I always have the chills. It actually helps with menopause because I don't hot flash at all because I'm always in the chills because of the anemia. But the anemia came back full force a month ago. But the combination, oh God,
Stress.
I think so. And the doctor's like, I just don't know. And I'm like, you don't see the common denominator here. The last time I had it and had to get a transfusion was a very stressful time in my life.
Stress is the number one impact on health, and it's the number one. Heart disease was the number one killer for quite a while, and the number one cause of heart disease is stress, which is interesting because it's not physical. It's all mental. And it kind of leads to when somebody kind of pointed that out to me, it was, if your mind can harm your body, then your mind can cure your body.
100%. And, I don't know anything about menopause and I don't know anything about anemia, but I do know a lot about Crohn's disease, which is also mine gets affected by stress as well. And, what I found in my journey with Crohn's is, none of us is getting out of here alive and some shit's going to hit us at some point. So then whatever your shit is that hits you, the more that you focus on how it's negatively affecting your life, the worse it gets. So then when I and I did that in the beginning, and when I finally made a shift to go, okay, the doctors are telling me my life's going to suck forever, and I don't accept that, and I'm going to do my own research and figure out how I can live with this and have a good life and not let it be a crutch. And I also figured out that people got tired. They'd ask me, how are you doing? And you could just see it in their eyes that they wanted me to tell them that I was feeling better. They didn't want to hear me whining and whinging about it. Like they just get tired of it. So I stopped doing that. And then when I stopped vocalizing it to other people, then I stopped doing it for myself too. And like, I still am a part of some Crohn's disease groups. And I see people like feeling like that this is what's wrong with their life. And it's not what's wrong with their life. It's just what's going on in their life. And same with me, like my Crohn's is not gone, but it's just what my life is. And I've had to make the adjustments necessary so that it's not pulling my life down. It's just part of my life. And like, this is maybe your opportunity. The fact that your anemia has come back, like, what can you do to lower your stress? And I think they're taking some steps right now to do so. Like some changes are afoot, but
there are definitely things I'm doing to reduce my
there
stress.
You go. But I mean, it is like, it's like in my book, the gift of your wreckage. Like, where is the gift? Yeah. There's so much research of people that find out they have cancer, and you can either go, oh God, I'm going to die. And then you fucking die. Or you go, all right, let's put on our boxing gloves and kick this thing in the ass. And then you get over it. Like it's so mental.
And welcome to Women Your Mother Warned You About, the podcast that has gone rogue. And I guess we are on topic for something here.
So to pile on what Rachel's saying, we've talked about Dave Asprey's book, Game Changers. And if you open his book to Law 3, which is when you say you'll try, you are lying, it starts with the words you choose matter more than you think, not just to the people you speak to, but also to your own nervous system. He goes on to say words are powerful. They set expectations and limits and send messages to our brains and our bodies about how much we are capable of. Language is part of your mental software. Use it consciously and with precision, and you will achieve things you probably never thought you would. Because we're telling everything we say is going, and it's the same. It's both negative and positive. If we say, "Oh, stress,"
it's definitely the programming. And what's interesting about that is, I never ever feel like I'm under stress. Like. And then I'm like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? So getting back to Asprey on that, I'm like, I don't have a conversation with myself like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. I just don't. It's interesting though. Am I internalizing it so much and ignoring it? Clearly, because it's manifested. Because for the anemia to come back out of nowhere, and there are telltale signs that can help me figure it out, like I crave ice. Like that's an anemia thing. Like can't even begin to explain that at all, what that's about. You either crave ice or dirt. So I'm just thankful. No, it's true. Dirt. I know. It's so
trying to get that iron. It's so true,
but I don't know what the ice thing is. I've actually researched the ice thing. That's true though. It's a craving like an iron, but for the ice, it's about like your body is craving energy, and the cooling of the ice is giving you energy because you're in extreme fatigue because you have less blood, and because of that, you're not oxygenated. So that it just creates a series of your heart rate gets higher resting. That's how I also know. Like I could have 150 heart rate rest just laying in bed. And you don't, yeah, it is scary because you're like, am I having a heart attack? Well, not yet, but you could, because your body's not able to carry oxygen because you don't have enough blood. And getting to what Rachel was saying, people don't understand certain things, and they don't want to because it's scary for them. Once they don't want to hear about it. Anytime I like talk to some people in my life about anemia, they just like. I asked someone, I'm like, do you know what anemia is? No.
So what's even scarier and kind of tied to the coronavirus situation we're in right now is you said a lot of people don't know what to do or what it is, including the medical community.
Oh, don't get me started.
No, the medical. I'm like, that's a real sore subject to me. Is the way that. And you see it now, right? With all the, if the doctor says this, and this must be the truth, because man, doctors in today's world are not programmed to, they're programmed to prescribe, and they don't see solutions. I went round and round with my doctor on something, and man, but I always tell people, what they call the person who graduated at the bottom of his class in medical school? Doctor.
Sorry, doctors, all you doctors out there.
Yeah. I had an appointment. This is my checkup about a year and a half ago. And my doctor said, well, your cholesterol is starting to rise. We're going to have to put you on statins. And I'm like, okay, for how long? Oh, for the rest of your life. It's like, I don't know about that. And I fought him tooth and nail. I would not do it. He finally prescribed a sonogram of my heart, which was a new procedure at the time, to see if there's calcification. Absolutely none. And I talked to him about statin reduces cholesterol in 97% of patients, but that set of patients still has heart attacks. So what's the deal with that? And then I had my last checkup was in February, and my statins, my cholesterol just plummeted without any statins. And it was like, can you tell me now, doc?
And I think that's how linked, it can be linked to stress as well. I mean, you could lower your blood pressure just by mindfulness and meditation.
Mindfulness, meditation, diet, exercise, not the diet that people think, but that's really what bothers me is just how we just fall to the medical community, and anything they say is gospel. And we're seeing it right now.
That is a really good reminder.
It's
such a good reminder that people are really falling into listening to all of it as gospel. And for anyone like us who have any kind of illness that has happened, I mean, I've had to advocate for myself constantly. I'm sure Rachel can talk about the same thing. Even with when I first became anemic, there were a number of things going on. I asked to be tested for mono and the Epstein-Barr virus, and the doctor was like, I don't think you need that. I'm like, I would like to be tested. And they kept fighting me on it. He's like, well, I'm going to send you to a hematologist, which you would think would be good for anemia. So I go to a hematologist, and I'm like, I want to be tested for the Epstein-Barr virus. And he just laughed at me. He's like, I highly doubt you have mono. I'm like, just fucking humor me and do the test. So sure enough, it came back. You've had the Epstein-Barr virus. It's been active for 10 months. I'm like, do you know anything about that virus? Because it leads to autoimmune diseases. Let me list them for you. And he hated me. And then he came back with, well, you're not sick. You don't have cancer. That's what he said to me. You're not sick. You don't have cancer. Because that was his primary bread and butter. We're cancer patients. I'm like, but nobody can explain this anemia. And that is like I want to call it like an entry level drug. It's an entry level disease that can create other problems. So why don't we just like attack this now?
It's not the way they're taught, and it's not how pharma makes its medicine.
And they don't like to be challenged.
And unfortunately, for many doctors today, they no longer have their own practices. They're in these huge practices. I always have for years gone round and round with my physician about take the flu shot. No, I'm not. I don't usually take the flu shot. And, 1 year, this is 3 or 4 years ago, I had a great discussion with him, and I realized he's bonused based upon the percentage of his patients that get flu shots. And if I'm in his shoes, I'm going to push flu shots.
Well, especially because they need money. I mean, they're between their insurance costs, their malpractice insurance costs, what they're dealing with the insurance companies, what they're dealing with the.
Oh, yeah.
They're hard pressed to make money.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And they want the easy thing.
So, and then we see it reflected in whatever the doctor says today is what we do.
Well, I think you got to constantly push back.
Yeah. Years ago in college, I was actually in pre-veterinary medicine.
I forgot about that. That's right.
And when I went to school, my college advisor, I asked him what school should I be in, because most vets and med school undergrads took a biology degree, and I had no interest in a biology degree. I wanted to do a business degree. And he said, well, that's great because most doctors don't know anything about economics or business. And we see that today.
So, one of the things that Keith, you had brought up, I think, in a text message of like who would fare better in this situation, men or women, during this COVID time. Mm-hmm. So I think there's some interesting things with that. As women, I think we take on a lot more emotion, and we're definitely more emotionally intelligent. Studies show that, so we know that. It's true.
I'm showing my emotional intelligence by not saying anything.
Well, you're an evolved kind of man. You're a different kind of man, Keith Walters. But that also, with that emotion, I think we probably take on more stress.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting how, from a gender perspective, the deaths are much more prominent from coronavirus in men than they are in women. More men are dying than women. And there's a lot of different thoughts about why that is, both from exposure and not recognizing it, and so forth.
Being stubborn, and ignoring that they're sick.
That's not uncommon. And then, so on the real physical end of the impact, and then on the recovery side, one of the things that I was also wondering about is, will there be gender impact on the economic recovery? Like, there's so many people unemployed. Unemployment rate right now 29.6%, right? So
how much?
Was it 29?
And I think it's more like 29 million unemployed, and like it was around 15%.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to look here.
But it was 29 or 30 million unemployed at this time.
38
million.
Right
wow.
now.
Okay, I haven't been watching.
U.S. unemployment rate using the UI data is now estimated to be between 25 and 29.6%. But unemployment is down this week. Unemployment claims are down this week. And as employment starts picking up, is there going to be gender impact on that pickup? And what is the overall pandemic impact going to be on employment? Is it going to impact women more than men?
Well, I think the whole kid factor is going to be an issue. I'd like to hear Rachel chime in about that, because I think it's sort of like I think about recidivism rates for women coming out of prison, right? Their kids are handed back to them, and so their chances of going back to prison are pretty high because they have that responsibility put on them. I would imagine you would see the same thing in this situation with the uncertainty of when kids are going back to school. Rachel?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you saying that you think that women won't go back to work because kids are not going back to school, or are you saying?
No, I think women are going to be impacted more because as moms, you just are.
Yeah.
Responsibility wise.
Well, at this point, I think the adjustment has already been made for moms. I mean, I don't think there's going to be more adjustment whether they go back or not, because we've already made the adjustment in the last, couple months. Definitely from my personal perspective, the responsibility has been a lot on me for the homeschooling stuff. And I brought Roxy's Chromebook back to school yesterday and spoke with the principal. I asked his thoughts on whether they'd go back to school in the fall. And he said he was as much in the dark as the rest of us because particularly in our area on the Grand Strand, there's such an enormous influx of tourism from especially the Northeast, which is a lot more affected than around here, that it's expected that we're going to have a spike around here. And people are really waving their flag of let's open everything back up. And, we don't need to wear masks because this is America and our freedom and all that shit. And, I personally, my personal stance, this is not, anything except for the way I see it. I'm just kind of hanging back in the wings. I work from home anyways, and I am not going to go out and hop in the middle of things. I've gone out to dinner a few times in restaurants that are practicing, a bit of social distancing and the tables are a little further apart, but I ain't going to the beach in the middle of that melee. No thanks, because I just don't trust it.
Yeah.
I just don't trust it, and frankly don't like being around that many humans anyways. So I just don't.
Especially during Turon season. We don't want to be out there anyway.
In the best of times, I don't like a crowd. I just don't. So I think I have thought about this whole scenario with school because I've seen some pretty strange rules that they're thinking about putting into place anyway when the kids go back to school. So I already had a small family meeting about let's have a family meeting about school, but we're letting it go for a second to just have a fucking break. But we're going to have a meeting about it and decide if they go back to school, what do we want to do? Do we want to put her through this, these crazy rules that just sound not fun anyway? Or do we want to keep her home and figure out a better strategy? I mean, I've thought about hiring a tutor so that I can actually have someone that's focused on her learning, since I'm not super effective at getting her to do her work, and somebody that's maybe on her level a little bit more that's not mom would be more effective. And personally, I'd be willing to invest in that rather than have her in a scenario described in these CDC guidelines that I've seen floating around that are like, put the kids in masks and set their desks so far apart and they can only walk one way and there's no recess and they can't eat in the cafeteria together. Like, the whole point of, I mean, let's face it, school was invented so that kids would have somewhere to go so their parents could work, right? It wasn't actually invented for kids to get smart, right? So there's that. And now kids can learn anything on the internet or from mom and dad that we can learn on the internet. And a lot of it is socialization at Roxy's age. Like, she wants to see her friends. So if they can't even play and they can't even get near one another and they can't touch each other, is that really worth it?
Yeah, you raise an interesting point. Will there be a demand for homeschooling that just goes up because people don't want to either do it? They're either afraid of the virus or they don't want to put their kids through these kind of routines that are going to be created. Yeah, and I've talked to some people, mostly women, who have said that they are questioning whether or not they want to go back to the office when, Rachel, you're in a situation where you may not have to go back to the office.
I can work from home.
Yeah. And some people will have to go back to the office and then make that decision of do I want to, or, because there has been some cases that I've heard of kids just really, the moms and dads just really experiencing connection with their children that they hadn't had before.
Well, and there's the age old, I don't know if it's age old, but I've heard it many times with mothers, with newer mothers, that they figure out it actually costs them more to send their kids to daycare than they can make going to work. So it's actually, better for them to stay home, especially when they're very, very young. And, I didn't send Roxy to daycare when she was a baby. She was cared for by her grandmother, thank God. I wouldn't have done it. Nope. I wouldn't have sent it.
And on the flip side of that, I have a friend who's a nurse and she's a single mom, and trying to homeschool was a nightmare for her. She's like, I just can't do it. Like, she's like, I'm putting him back in daycare, and it's costing her, but it's also saving her like some sanity.
Right. But if you have that's the trade-off, and Rachel brought up a good point, hiring a tutor, and with the unemployment rate right now, hiring a tutor, it may not be a teacher, but it could be a college, student, or, there's all kind of great teachers out there. I think you have to make sure they're both good characters and good teachers.
There's also teachers.
I think
there's
a
also
great
teachers
approach.
who have said they don't want to go back. That's a whole nother issue. Are you going to have enough teachers?
Yeah, I was told by the principal yesterday that there were several teachers that weren't coming back, and I don't know the reasons, but there was several teachers that I was like, oh, so-and-so's not coming back. And, one more point on that is I have one daughter, and my husband has a son who's a high schooler, so he can basically handle his own shit. But moms, and not saying that there aren't dads out there that are helping. I'm just the mom that was helping the most with school. If there's a parent out there with multiple kids, like let's say you've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old, like multiple kids with all this schooling, I can't see how they were surviving it, because I was seriously I had at least 2 bad meltdowns with this homework stuff, and I just have one. It's hard.
You had the meltdown, or Roxy did?
Oh, Roxy had a meltdown every single time. I only had about 2 or maybe 3 bad meltdowns. Of just the pressure.
Sometimes I get to see them on Trimarco Polo.
Yeah.
Many of us are not teachers, so we're put into a position of having to do a job that we're not wired for.
And I'm not patient. I'm very much like this, as you guys might know. And so that doesn't really work for someone that needs it to be more gentle. And that's why certain people are better in that teacher mode. It's the personality types. Like some of us need to be petted. Some people need to be petted. I'm really great. Like I was great with teaching groups of children in dance, because you need to be like this or you lose control of them. But on a one-on-one scenario, I definitely think that like a soft-spoken, like super nice person would be better at teaching my kid than me. I'm not soft-spoken and nice.
Wow.
I'm like, let's get this shit done so we can move on. And it's not working.
Hey, Warners, hope you are enjoying this episode so far. Just wanted to tell you something real quick. If you got something out of this show and want to support it more, check out our new and exciting Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Warners, where you can leave us a tip and help support the show. That would be really cool. So patreon.com/Warners. And now back to the show. I had the most fascinating company meeting yesterday with my performers. And I went in very black and white. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to rip this Band-Aid off and give them a state of the business. And I was like really hardcore with them on like what's going on. And I think I finally woke them up. So on one side, I like to say I'm emotionally intelligent and being sensitive. I think at one point I even said that and said it in that way. Like trying to be sensitive to everybody's needs here, but this is the reality of what's going on. I told them I was going to put in essence, a shower curtain around the stage for them to perform behind, because it was better than plexiglass. They're like, you're gonna you're going to encase us in that? Like, how are we going to breathe? And I was like, oh, God.
Wow.
So wait a minute. You're putting like a clear shower curtain between the audience and the stage?
Yeah, I'm suggesting that.
Oh,
Because the
interesting.
survey, here's the like, we still don't have clearance to fucking open our theater. Still. Oh, yeah,
Really?
I'm livid.
You need to live in Texas.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to be the woman in Texas who gets arrested because at this point, it'll be 3 months that we're closed. Like, what business sustains that? That's like, so I had to have like a come to Gina meeting with them yesterday. I'm like, I don't know what you guys think, but continuing to like not have to shut down is getting harder with each day. And here's the, things that we're going to have to deal with. And they're like, well, are you going to make all the customers wear masks? I was like, no, are you going to make them? I'm like, are you guys ready to enforce it? Like I had to paint the picture of like, yeah, we can require customers to wear masks, but there are customers that are not going to want to wear masks, and they're going to push and they're going to resist. We'll make it a policy.
What do you think you're speaking, and I'm thinking of this image I've seen a couple of times on Facebook of a theater where they've removed chairs in between. So there's like 2 chairs, 1 chair, and separations between the chairs in this theater. So what do you think, Gina, is going to be the crowd response? Like, because I think that's part of what could potentially be a problem of like, are people going to come to theaters where they have to sit next to people, and how's that going to work, and how's that going to feel?
Well, at first I was having that same question, and then I went to get my nails done, and everyone is sitting on top of each other, and there's no social distancing. And I go out to dinner, and everyone's sitting on top of each other, and only some restaurants are social distancing. There is a lot of no social distancing going out there. So yes, there are people who are like, I don't care.
Gotcha.
So those people are coming out. So the challenge is balancing those people with the performers who are like, I literally don't have enough performers to perform in June. So even when the governor gives the green light, which I think he's going to do this week, and the way he runs is like, y'all can open in 2 days. And he has no concept of that's impossible because we need advance notice to open a theater. First we need to like be able to advertise the show, and we need performers who'll perform. But 70% of them indicated on a survey they would not return in June. And then when I tried to do the schedule, I'm like, we're not opening. I have no one. I don't have enough bodies to actually run the operation. And that's the reality of it. So there's this dichotomy between, they're like, well, what about masks? Can we wear masks? And I'm like, well, how loud will you project through those masks? Sure. We're in a different type of business that we actually need to be heard. So they came up with, you know what? I will hand it to them. They came up with a solution.
You know what would be and I don't know if you've seen these, what would be a solution that could solve a lot of that? Because I think also, having been to your show finally, you need to be able to see the expressions on the faces as well. It's, some of the humor is lost. You can't see it, but I've seen these people it's like a plexiglass kind of mask like that.
We ordered them last night.
Yeah,
that was the suggestion.
Those would be
that
good,
was
actually,
the suggestion.
because then you wouldn't need the shower curtain thing, and then you could see the faces, and they can project. The sound will come. It won't be like on the mask like this, but it would. It'd probably still be somewhat muffled. But.
That was the suggestion.
That's a good suggestion.
Actually, one of our nurses came up with.
Yeah.
So face shields.
Face shields. So
let me know if you need it. Let me know if you need to order them, because one of my companies is converted.
Yes,
to
I
face
do.
Shields.
I just ordered like an initial batch, and so we have rules around it too. I'm like, I will distribute masks, facial shields to everybody, and then you're on your own. If you lose them, you're on your own. If you forget to bring it, you're on your own. Like, I mean, I've set all the guidelines for them, and it was a real eye opener for them. They're like, well, what about backstage? I'm like, there's no longer a backstage. They're like, what? I'm like, you will wait in the mall lobby to enter the theater. Okay. Are you sure we can't social distance back there? I'm like, you tell me. It's like a 3x3 space.
The social distance, I believe the social distancing in public as things open up is going to last about 2 weeks.
It's not happening at all.
It's not happening at all down here.
And then, well, it's just human nature.
Right.
I mean, if there is something that is scary, you're careful around it. You take care, and then if it stays there, you get used to it. And then it's just ubiquitous in the background. It moves from foreground to background. And that's kind of where we are now.
There's some audiobook, some book that I was listening to recently that talks about the squirrel, like that, the squirrel nature, where you can watch a squirrel, like it sees a piece of food and it kind of comes near and then it runs back. And then it's like, okay, let me see. Let me go a little closer. Okay, and it runs back just to protect itself. And then finally, when it goes back and forth enough times, then it realizes that, okay, maybe there's not any danger, even if the piece of food is completely poisoned. Like, and that's what's going on. Like you said, Keith, like people are kind of testing it. And, my parents even, so on Cinco de Mayo, maybe, they had a community barbecue and everybody started out in their driveways, like social distancing. But as people got a little bit of alcohol, a little margarita in them, they got closer and closer. And my dad was cracking me up because he's like, I'm backing away and backing away and backing away from people because they lose that sense of danger. And I think that's the actual underlying fear in our area of like, everybody's kind of going, things are fine. But there's people walking around with the antibodies that could be infecting others. And will we have a spike? I don't know. It depends on who knows?
So the number of the CEOs I work with, we're talking about when to return to the office. And, one of the things that came to mind that I suggested was start surveying your employees and ask your employees, have they been to a restaurant? Have they been to a club? Have they been to a bar or whatever? And do not ask your employees to come back to the office until you see a majority of them have been socializing on their own. That if you're the driver of moving people closer, there's going to be some potential animosity toward you. But if you see that your people are already starting to socialize, then it's going to be, more normative to then come back to the office.
That's brilliant, Keith Walters.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to steal that.
And the other thing is
really good.
The comfort level too and in particular, my industry and mortgage, they've been polling us for the last month of how are you feeling about coming back to the office? What's your productivity like at home? Do you feel better about, because I'm sure there's people, and I know the CEO of our company said he just hates being at home, but not because he doesn't love his family. He loves his family, but he's the kind of guy that needs the separation of my family's here. I play with my kids and then go to the office. And at the office, I'm in work mode and I'm undisturbed to focus on my work. And that's one person's view. And my view is I'm actually more productive because I don't lose 2 hours in the car. Like this past week, I have gone to the office and I saw that immediately. I was frustrated and more stressed because I lost productivity time driving to the office when I've been super productive working from home. And, my folks don't give a shit where I'm at as long as I'm producing. Bring in the volume. Doesn't matter where you are, So there's so many different views on it.
And going back to who's going to fare better, men or women, I think women can also adapt more and juggle more. And back to that emotional intelligence piece, that's another big one that's come up that I've heard from people in the C-suite that they have managers that don't know how to manage their workforce from home, and they're concerned that getting them back to work, and some of them will continue to stay home, how are they going to continue to engage them? And that's another, I think women, we have a tendency to be more nurturing and empathetic, and we're going to check in with you more likely than a man would.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll not say men and women. I think masculine and feminine behaviors. And I think, there's the sense of community is a feminine behavior. Yeah. And I think right now, this creation of a sense of community is so important in an organization. Now, I think it's more of a male behavior is competition and so forth. So when it becomes time to pivot, change, sometimes that's more of a masculine drive right there. But right now, the times call for this community sense within the organization. And I think you're absolutely right on that. It'll, one of the things that I was thinking about when I did send that text about impact of women is women are much more apt to have part-time jobs than full-time jobs. And women are also more predominant in the hospitality, restaurant, hotel, all that sector, which has been hit so hard.
It's crazy.
And so, a year from now, are we going to be looking at larger unemployment for women than men? And is it going to be voluntary or involuntary if it is larger?
I think companies that are more emotionally intelligent are going to start, this just from what I've been hearing, talking to people, they're going to be looking for people with the behavioral skill sets to be about community, about being about connecting. And I think women will fare well when it comes to that, because I think I think it could actually help them, depending on the organization.
So focusing on that coming out of the environment, coming out of this, or as we kind of come out of the current situation.
If you're a company that is trying to figure out how you're going to pivot back to this new norm of having part of your workforce continue to work from home, or all of it, like a company that we know in Dallas that they're literally going to go on to that model and save $500,000 a year in commercial rent. If you're looking for how you're going to do that pivot, you're going to start looking for employees who are going to be able to have that emotional capacity. And I think women are going to end up interviewing better for it.
And self-driven people. And I think I know
it's a combination.
It doesn't matter, in my opinion, if you're a man or a woman, if you're self-driven, and you are able to stay focused on work while you're at home. And I think it just depends on the personality type more than the gender, in my opinion. And that's just based on, I think, like, I'm a woman, and a lot of women say, "Oh, I can't be at home and work because I just see all the laundry and I see the dishes." And I'm not like that. I mean, I sometimes will do it now, especially to give myself a break, because I will be grinding for like 12 solid hours, and I'll go, okay, 5 minutes. I'm going to just take 5 minutes and go do the dishes to stop like frying my brain with work. But I think men can do that too.
That's also getting you up and down.
Yeah. And I just started reading this Jim Quick book called Limitless. I've been following Jim Quick for a long, long time, since I heard about him. And
what's it called?
It's called Limitless. And Jim Quick is mentioned in Dave Asprey's book, and that's when I first heard about him. And he talks, he's a brain coach is his deal. He's super cool. His story is amazing. And I finally grabbed his book because he had it on sale. And one of the takeaways so far, and there's a lot of, I'm like super nerding out over it, is that you really want to work in small increments, like 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And you hear different varieties of maybe 45 minutes on, 10 minutes off. But his is if you're doing really focused work, especially like the work that he's teaching for your brain, 25 minutes on and then take a 5-minute break. And it's such a good reminder, because I don't know about you guys, but I can sometimes like be so in my 2 laptops and my phone for so long that I'm like, my brain literally feels melted. And I now, after that reminder over the weekend, reading his book, I'm like, okay, 25 minutes. And I'll literally put my timer on now. I'll time myself for about 20 minutes. And then I'll get up and do something for a second. And it's way more effective. for me.
I agree with that. That's quite why I like working from home, because I don't mind throwing a load of laundry in, because it forces me to get up, take that break.
Mm-hmm. And
so that I'm continuing to do that.
It's a time management thing, because the danger is, and I think it's probably like TV people are probably in danger. Like the TV is there and they could just turn it on. And I'm just not a TV person. I'm a workhorse. Yeah. So like it doesn't faze me too much, but I know it's a matter of time management. It might just be, Gina and I, we're very entrepreneurial. So we've figured out how to manage time. And that's the key to so many things.
Especially time blocking. Where I see another advantage is, it's not necessarily a gender thing because it has to be driven, is the Gen Xers. So the Gen Xers, who are really the managers, middle managers, C-suite right now, we have been raised to be extremely autonomous. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at it too, is that we can fare really well through this because we don't need structure and we hate authority. So
and you desire work-life balance on your own terms.
Exactly. So we're like made for a pandemic, I think.
Yeah. And my generation is the baby boomers. Or more in the office time, more time in the office, more time in the office, time in the office.
What else am I supposed to do besides time in the office? And we're like, whatever. This is an old man.
Yeah. Thank you.
I wasn't talking about you. We're like the millennials to you guys. Sort of.
I'm definitely a Gen Xer, but I don't. When you said we hate authority, I don't hate authority, and I think that might be my dance background that I respect authority, and I don't hate it. That's for sure.
Well, not necessarily hate. Well, some do hate it, but we like to do things on our terms, and we like to set the structure, and we don't need you to tell us what to do because we already know what to do. Or maybe it's just me.
I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Gina speaks for Gen X. Maybe please leave your comments below on Gina's analysis of Gen X.
Gina on Gen X.
On Gen X, indeed.
I've had to do quite a bit of training, generational training, so.
The overall. And there's always exceptions to the rule. And maybe I'm just exceptional.
And your generational stuff is also impacted by the generations you were raised by. I mean, I was raised by two different generations. A boomer and then the traditional before that. It's because they were 25 years apart.
What was before boomers?
Yeah. Silent
or traditional.
Yeah. And it's my parents were two generations before me, and I am two generations before Zach, my son. And it's an interesting result in this parenting approach when you're separated by a generation, because that's unusual, and it brings an interesting approach.
Yeah.
To those. And I'm wondering, if you brought up the topic of generation, generations are oftentimes separated by a big event. The 9/11 was a kind of a big event marking the prior generation. Does this now kind of create a demarcation or impact element for this new generation?
I think so. My tip, just the tip Tuesday, I didn't do it till the end of the day yesterday because it was a crazy Monday, Tuesday day. And when I finally ended up doing it, if you haven't watched it, Gina, it's interesting because my child.
What was this called?
Just the Tip Tuesdays.
Where have you, Keith, really do not know about this?
You haven't heard Just the Tip?
Keith, it is part of the show.
I've heard that, but not about this. Okay.
Did you know that Women Your Mother Warned You About puts out a weekly tip every Tuesday called Just the Tip Tuesday? And every week, it's either Rachel or I. We rotate.
They're really good, too.
You should see them, Keith. They're videos from us two lovely ladies every Tuesday.
Most of the time, Gina is.
I'm going to start that. I don't know how I missed
Gina's
that.
really organized and has like very good business tips usually. And mine is usually, lately especially, me having a small meltdown on the back porch and sharing how to survive that. So last night, I literally like almost cry in the video because my child's computer basically crashed. I spent an hour and a half on the phone with tech support trying to figure it out. And what I realized, my takeaway was, you know, through this pandemic, my child has actually been pretty happy and fine. And so I've gone with it. But the dark side to it is that a lot of what's happened is that she's become really happy getting on FaceTime with her friends, and they get on and they play this video game together, and they're literally for hours and hours. And, you know, in the midst of me watching on Facebook, some of these parents going, my children are freaking out and they're miserable and they're so mad at me, they can't play with their friends. I'm looking at my child going, well, she's pretty happy over there. And are you doing okay? Yeah, I'm good. Go away. Like, she's good. But now that we're coming out of it, she doesn't want to separate from that. And the fact that her computer crashed last night was like a huge meltdown, that she felt like her life was shattered. And I'm like, oh shit, I screwed up by thinking that I was doing the right thing. And it's just, it was a very interesting moment for me to just also realize, okay, you know, everything's fine. This is first world problems. She's loved and she's healthy and she's happy and everything's fine. But like in my mind is like, did I fuck up by thinking that, okay, just allowing this to be fine because she's fine doing this. Now it's not fine when I'm like, don't you want to go outside and take a walk with me? Like, because kids are super fine by just being on FaceTime with each other, like for hours, some of these kids.
What game is she getting into?
She's into Roblox. They like, it's like a little, they can get in and they can walk around and they build these little cities, sort of like Minecraft. And they can get outfits and do stuff. And she's not, and on the flip side, so Felix's son came over and stayed with us the other night, and he brought his PlayStation and hooked it up to my TV. And I was sitting there and I'm like, cause he does the same thing. He gets on his headset with his friends. They're just playing different games. He had this video game. I swear I would be like looking down at something and look up, and it looked like I was watching a real basketball game. That's how amazing the graphics are. And maybe I'm late to the party, but I was like, that's amazing. They had like dancers in the break time, and it was crazy.
Yep, it is. So just the tip, foreplay to women your mother warned you about.
Yes, Keith, and I've pulled up our YouTube page. You can actually you don't even need to be on Facebook, Keith. You can just go to the Women Your Mother Warned You About YouTube page and find the Tuesday Just the Tip.
That number of subscribers is pretty fucking sad, though. We need to work on that.
It's, yeah. Well, that's why I was hoping putting our tips on YouTube would start to help us with
Clearly, it's making a huge dent.
Well, you know, there's also that opportunity to join our Patreon page, patreon.com/Warners, where you can get all kinds of amazing content, or you could subscribe for free to YouTube.
You know, I think,
but look at
overall, like subscribers. How many channels are you subscribed to on YouTube? And maybe this is a generational thing too.
None, since they started censoring information. I've pretty much left YouTube.
See, look, you could see my tips. I could tell which ones are mine. The ugly cry, breathe, and like parenting meltdown. Those are mine. Gina's are like, eat the frog.
Eat the frog.
Learn how to be a better business person. Or whatever. Here's how you pivot in business. And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to die.
Wow.
It's the difference in COVID of parents of children and parents
Yeah,
of only dogs.
it's good. It's good variety. Keith, if you're bored, go to our YouTube channel and watch these amazing
have to do
videos.
that.
And everybody
I'll
else
do
too.
that.
You guys can too. But honestly, the whole one of the main points of this podcast is to help give you guys out there who are listening tips on how to survive in business and survive in life, and that you are getting that. Some of it is like last night. I started my just the tip by saying this is going to be super real and raw. Because sometimes that's what people need to hear is that they're not alone in feeling that way. And that's why I'm not afraid to share those things because I know there's parents out there that are feeling that and worse.
So maybe Keith one day could do just the tip.
I always say that.
We need Keith to do a just the tip video.
You can have my week in 2 weeks. I always forget.
Okay.
I always forget.
We do we just, go solo. You have to be willing to be alone, Keith.
Okay, let me think about what topic I can dive into and we can penetrate that.
Okay. So watch some of our videos to get some ideas.
I will do that.
I'm sure
Well, it's
I'm
time-
sure you can penetrate any topic.
Nothing's too hard for you.
Well,
On that note,
As long as
you were saying, Gina?
as long as everybody is happy at the end.
yes.
I think it's
I need a
time.
cigarette.
I think it's time for us to wrap up this episode, this rogue episode of Women Your Mother Warned You About. Thank you to all of our warners for listening. I'm Gina Trimarco with Pivot10 Results. And hey, if you love these shows, go share them because they're just filled with so much amazing goodness and tips. And that's my tip. That's my tip for you. So if you want to learn more about me personally, you can go to our amazing website, womenyourmotherwarnedyyouabout.com or ginatrimarco.com. And on to Rachel.
If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me all over social media as The Singing Lender or the website of the same name, The Singing Lender. New video coming out soon. I'm so excited. But to find, it's going to be awesome. And to find out more about Keith.
Well, before that, sing something for us. What's your new song going to be?
Sing, monkey, sing.
I don't want to reveal it before it's ready.
Wow, that's a great tease.
It's coming soon to YouTube channel near you.
Too bad you're not on Facebook because the pictures that she posted of her dancers, hot tamale.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I've actually been planning this one for quite a while, and because of the pandemic, and the dancers that I have worked with, I wanted to give them something to focus on, and it was actually a really fun endeavor over the last couple of months to work on, and the costuming, and the dancers really were thrilled to be able to have some work because, performers, the money is one thing, but for performers, the actual art and craft and feeling that inner purpose as a performer is even more important than the money. And if you're not a performer, I don't know if you can understand.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lack. And so I really felt good about having these girls have something to work on. It was a lot of fun.
It's passion. That's what it is. It's the passion for it. It shows through. It's not about the money.
Mm-hmm. The money.
And where can we find Keith?
Keith. Oh, you can find me on that website, womenyourmotherwarnedyouabout.com. And you can get a connection to my massive social networking led by my LinkedIn page.
Awesome. I don't think we got anything else. We got anything? Am I forgetting anything? I think we mentioned it all. No, that's
it.
Okay. What was the topic so I can come up with a title for this show besides Rogue? Anything? Any ideas? Any takeaways?
Wandering.
Well, a lot of the topic that interwove itself, I don't know if I use that word right, throughout was, are women affected more than men in our adjustment back into the new normal, or have women been affected more than men through the pandemic? Something like that.
So, okay. Sounds good. I'll come up
Good
with
luck.
something. Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it.
We should do this more often.
We should. It was so lovely seeing your face, Keith.
You too.
And I'm so excited that we could educate you about our video series that you didn't know about.
Actually, Rebecca came up with just the phrase "just the tip" Tuesday.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
She was like, "What do you think of this?" And we're like, "Oh yeah."
Tell her I approve.
Yeah. And then I asked her to start putting them on YouTube, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. That is terrific.
Check it out, Keith.
Okay, I will.
All right, y'all, we gotta go.
Have a wonderful day.
Sayonara. Stay dry.
Bye, guys. Bye, Warners. Bye, Keith.
Bye, ladies.
This really will get serious soon.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. I don't think anybody wants it to be serious.
Women Your Mother Warned You About is a Pod About It production. You've got a great idea. Let's pod about it. Visit podaboutit.com for more information.
Woof, woof. Monkey, monkey.